In the bustling heart of Eldridge Street, where the cobblestones whispered secrets of forgotten dreams, stood a grand Victorian building that had seen better days. Its faded red brick facade, etched with ivy like veins on an aging hand, housed a labyrinth of apartments that once echoed with the laughter of prosperous families. But for Eleanor Hargrove, it had been a prison of polished cruelty. Eleanor had arrived there 20 years ago as a blushing bride, her heart full of the naive optimism that only youth can muster. At 22, she was a vision of quiet grace, long auburn hair cascading like autumn leaves, eyes the color of storm-tossed seas, and a smile that could coax flowers from concrete. She married Thomas Hargrove, the eldest son of the formidable Hargrove clan, in a ceremony that was less a celebration of love and more a strategic alliance sealed with silver spoons and whispered dowries. The Hargroves were old money, their wealth rooted in textile mills that had churned out fortunes during the industrial boom. Thomas's parents, Reginald and Beatrice, ruled their empire from the penthouse of that very building, a sprawling apartment adorned with crystal chandeliers and portraits of stern ancestors. To them, Eleanor was an interloper girl from the wrong side of the tracks, whose father was a mere schoolteacher, and whose mother baked pies for church fundraisers. "She's pretty enough," Beatrice had confided to a friend over tea, "but she'll need breaking in." The breaking began subtly. At first, it was the sidelong glances during family dinners, the way Beatrice's voice dripped honeyed venom when she critiqued Eleanor's table manners. "Darling, one doesn't slurp the soup like a commoner," she'd say, her lips curling into a smile that never reached her eyes. Thomas, ever the dutiful son, chuckled along, his hand squeezing Eleanor's knee under the table, in a gesture meant to reassure, but only deepening her isolation. Then came the miscarriages. The first one, early in their marriage, was a quiet tragedy. Eleanor curled in the master bedroom, her body a battlefield of grief, while downstairs the family toasted to some minor business victory. Beatrice swept in with trays of broth and platitudes. "These things happen to strengthen the bloodline, dear. You'll try again," but the second, and the third, turned pity into disdain. Whispers slithered through the halls. Barren, unfit, a curse on the family. By the fourth loss, Eleanor's spirit was fraying at the edges. She spent days in the dim light of the apartment, stitching quilts from scraps of fabric she'd salvaged from the mill's tiny memorials to the children she'd never hold. Thomas, buried in ledgers and late nights at the office, grew distant, his affections as threadbare as her creations. "Pull yourself together, Eleanor," he'd mutter, avoiding her gaze. "Father's counting on me to secure the next deal." The final blow came on a rain-lashed autumn evening. 6 months after the last miscarriage, Reginald had called a family council in the opulent drawing room, the air thick with cigar smoke and the scent of aged whiskey. Eleanor, summoned like a reluctant witness, stood before them, her hands trembling, as she clutched a letter from the doctor, confirming yet another failure. "You're a liability," Reginald boomed, his face a thundercloud of jowls and disapproval. He was a bear of a man, his suit straining against a belly forged from excess. "This family needs heirs, not hysterics. Thomas, end it. Now." Thomas hesitated, his eyes flicking to Eleanor like a man glancing at a sinking ship. "Father, we can work through this." "Work through it?" Beatrice interjected, her voice a scalpel slicing through the tension. She rose from her velvet chaise, her pearls clacking like judgmental beads. "You've worked through enough." Look at her, pale as a ghost, muttering to herself over those ridiculous rags. "The servants call her the mad woman already. What will the neighbors say?" Eleanor felt the words land like punches. She opened her mouth to protest, but a sob escaped instead, raw and unbidden. The room spun, the portraits leering down as if in agreement. Thomas stood, his chair scraping the floor like a guillotine's blade. "Eleanor," he said softly, but his voice cracked with finality. "It's over. Pack your things." She didn't pack. In the dead of night, as thunder rattled the windows, Eleanor fled with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small sewing kit tucked into her coat. pocket the one gift from her mother that hadn't been tainted by Hargrove gold. The building's doorman, old Mr. Wilkins, watched her go with pity in his rheumy eyes. "Godspeed, miss," he murmured, pressing a crumpled $5 bill into her hand. The streets of Eldridge welcomed her with indifferent cruelty. Rain soaked her to the bone, turning her wool coat into a sodden shroud. She stumbled into a dingy alley behind a row of shuttered shops, collapsing against a dumpster that reeked of rot and regret. There, in the flickering glow of a distant street lamp, she wept until dawn broke, gray and unforgiving. By midday, hunger gnawed at her insides like a feral dog. The $5 bought a stale loaf of bread from a corner bakery, but pride, or what was left of it, kept her from begging. Instead, she wandered the markets, her eyes drawn to the vibrant chaos of fabrics fluttering from vendor stalls. A bolt of blue calico caught her eye, cheap and cheerful, and in a moment of desperate inspiration, she bartered her wedding ring for it. The gold band, symbol of her shattered vows, fetched enough for the cloth and a few needles. That first garment was born of necessity, a simple apron, stitched crookedly on her lap amid the pigeons and passers-by. She sold it to a harried mother for $2, the woman's grateful nod igniting a spark in Eleanor's chest. It wasn't much, but it was hers untainted, unjudged. Word spread slowly, like ink bleeding through paper. The crazy old lady with the haunted eyes and nimble fingers, sewing miracles from scraps on the curb. Children gathered to watch, their mothers shooing them away while secretly admiring the work. Eleanor Hargrove, no. Just Eleanor now had begun her resurrection, one stitch at a time. The first winter was a gauntlet of frost and fortitude. Eldridge's winds howled through the alleyways like vengeful spirits, nipping at Eleanor's exposed fingers as she hunched over her makeshift workbench, a splintered crate balanced on her knees. She learned quickly, mornings for mending socks and hems for the factory workers, trudging to their shifts, afternoons for custom pieces that brought a few pennies more. Evenings, when the cold clawed deepest, she dreamed of warmth and woke to the reality of threadbare blankets scavenged from thrift bins. Survival demanded reinvention. Eleanor traded stories for shelter, bartering tales of her former life carefully edited to omit the shame for a caught in Mrs. Delaney's boarding house. Mrs. Delaney was a widow with a face like weathered oak and a heart softened by her own losses. "You've got fire in you, girl," she'd say, ladling watery stew into Eleanor's bowl. "Don't let the wolves snuff it out." The wolves were everywhere. Nosy shopkeepers who haggled her prices down to insult, rival seamstresses who sneered at her street corner setup, and the ghosts of the Hargroves, haunting her nightmares with their mocking laughter. Once, on a market day, she spotted Thomas across the square arm in arm with a new bride, her belly already swelling with the air the family craved. Eleanor's needle pierced her thumb, blood blooming on the linen like a rose of rage. She didn't cry. Instead, she channeled it into her work, stitching with a fury that turned simple dresses into works of art. By spring, her reputation bloomed. Ladies from the better neighborhoods sought her out, drawn by whispers of the miracle mender who could transform rags into elegance. Eleanor invested her earnings wisely. A second-hand sewing machine, old and stubborn but reliable, bolts of quality silk smuggled from mill discards, and crucially, a notebook where she sketched designs, flowing gowns inspired by the wildflowers, pushing through sidewalk cracks, tailored suits that echoed the strength of oak trees. It was during one such sketching session, under the dappled shade of a park bench, that she met Leela. The girl was no older than 12, all elbows and knees, with hair like tangled brambles and eyes sharp as tacks. She plopped down beside Eleanor, peering at the drawings with unabashed curiosity. "That's pretty," Leela said, pointing to a sketch of a velvet cape. "But why's the collar all twisty like a snake?" Eleanor chuckled, the sound rusty from disuse. "It's a flourish, love. Makes it unique like you." Leela's cheeks flushed, and she confessed her own secret. A dreamer trapped in a laundress's life, her fingers rough from bleach and boiling water. "Ma says dreaming's for fools, but I want to draw, like you." From that day, Leela became Eleanor's shadow apprentice, confidant, and fierce protector. Together, they braved the streets, Leela fetching threads while Eleanor sewed, their laughter a defiant melody against the city's grind. Leela taught her the underground economy, where to find free scraps from theater wardrobes, how to dodge the rent collectors who prowled like sharks. In return, Eleanor taught her stitches and stories, weaving tales of far-off lands where women ruled as queens. But prosperity was a fragile thread. That summer, a fire ravaged a market district, claiming Eleanor's crate and machine in a blaze of opportunistic flames arson. The whispers claimed, by jealous competitors. She stood amid the ashes, smoke stinging her eyes, and felt the old despair clawing back. Leela, soot-streaked and furious, hugged her tight. "We rebuild, Ellie. Stronger." They did, with loans from sympathetic customers and Leela's relentless optimism. Eleanor acquired a singer pedal machine, its hum a hymn of hope. She expanded, taking a tiny stall in the rebuilt market, where her creations drew crowds. Dresses that hugged curves like lovers' whispers. Blouses embroidered with motifs of resilience, phoenixes rising from thread. Women came not just for the clothes, but for the woman behind them. The one who listened without judgment, who mended hearts as deftly as hems. Years blurred into a tapestry of triumphs and trials. By her 5th year on the streets, Eleanor was 30, her auburn hair streaked with silver like comet trails, but her eyes burned brighter. She saved every penny, her tin bank swelling like a promise. Leela grew into a young woman of 16, her sketches rivaling Eleanor's, and together they dreamed bigger. A shop of their own, a haven for the overlooked. One crisp October morning 10 years to the day since her exile, Eleanor stood before a real estate agent's office, her heart pounding like a war drum. The building on Eldridge Street was for sale. The Hargrove textile empire had crumbled under Reginald's mismanagement and Thomas's ineptitude. Debts had forced the sale of assets, including the family seat. Price, $250,000. Eleanor's savings, $50,000. The gap yawned like an abyss. But Leela, ever the spark, grinned. "Then we bridge it, boss. With style." The bridge began with ambition's sharp edge. Eleanor rebranded Eleanor's Atelier, a name that evoked Parisian elegance without the pretension. She targeted the elite wives of mill owners, actresses treading local, stages offering bespoke designs that whispered of exclusivity. Her secret weapon? Leela's illustrations, bold and modern, splashed across flyers distributed in high society tea rooms. The first big break came from Victoria Langford, a shipping heiress with a penchant for drama. Victoria swept into the market stall one afternoon, her first stole trailing like a royal train, trailed by a gaggle of sycophants. "I've heard of you," she declared, eyeing an emerald gown on the mannequin. "The street sorceress. Make me something that stops hearts." Eleanor measured her with steady hands, noting the widow's peak of insecurity beneath the bravado. "Hearts stop for many reasons, Mrs. Langford. What story shall yours tell?" By week's end, the gown was ready, silk the color of midnight, embroidered with silver threads depicting a woman's solitary voyage across stormy seas. Victoria wore it to the Eldridge Gala, turning heads and igniting envy. The next morning, orders flooded in 20, then 50. Eleanor's stall overflowed. She hired 2 seamstresses, then 5. All women like her, widows, runaways, dreamers discarded by fate. Leela handled the books, her ledgers as precise as her lines. "We're at 10000, she announced one night, clinking glasses of cheap wine in their cramped boarding room. Halfway there, but the path twisted. Reginald Hargrove, sensing the sales slipping away, mounted a smear campaign. Anonymous letters to Eleanor's clients. "Beware the mad woman's touch, her stitches unravel sanity." Thomas, now balding and bitter, confronted her in the market, his face flushed with brandy. "You think you can humiliate us? Crawling back like a beggar?" Eleanor met his gaze, her voice steel-wrapped silk. "I'm no beggar, Thomas. I'm building what you tore down." He laughed, a hollow bark. "You'll fail, like always." She didn't. Instead, she wove alliances, Victoria, loyal and lavish, hosted a fashion show in her mansion, showcasing Eleanor's line to the cream of society. The reviews glowed. Eleanor's designs don't clothe the body, they arm the soul. Orders tripled. Savings swelled to $150,000. Yet doubt gnawed in quiet moments. Nights when Leela snored softly beside her. Eleanor traced the scars on her palms, pricks from 1,000 needles. Reminders of fragility. Was revenge a worthy flame? Or would it consume her? She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the ledger's climb. The final leap came via an unlikely patron, Dr. Miriam Hale, a botanist with a fortune from rare orchids and a heart scarred by her own losses. Miriam discovered Eleanor at a charity fair, drawn by a shawl that mirrored the delicate veins of her prized blooms. Over tea in Miriam's greenhouse, surrounded by humid air and exotic petals, Eleanor confessed her dream. By the building, Miriam said simply, her eyes twinkling like dew-kissed leaves, "I'll back you, not as charity, but investment. Your spirit's rarer than any flower I've cultivated." The loan was generous, the terms fair. On a sun-drenched November day, Eleanor signed the papers, her hand steady as the pen scratched her name across destiny. Ownership of 47 Eldridge Street transferred to Hargrove Properties. The Hargroves were informed via courier, a poetic touch. Leela insisted. That evening, as snow dusted the streets like confectioner's sugar, Eleanor and Leela stood before the building. The doorman, Mr. Wilkins, now gray as ash but sharp as ever, tipped his hat. "Welcome home, ma'am." Home. The word tasted like victory laced with ash. Renovation began at dawn. Eleanor hired local craftsmen, widows' sons, immigrants with calloused hands and hungry eyes, transforming the Hargrove mausoleum into a vibrant hive. The penthouse became the atelier flagship. Sunlit studios where seamstresses hummed over machines, bolts of fabric cascading like waterfalls. Lower floors housed affordable apartments for working women. Rents modest but fair, with communal kitchens stocked by Eleanor's own designs. The grand opening was a spectacle. Victoria's orchestra played waltzes. Leela's banners fluttered in the breeze. Ladies in Eleanor's gowns mingled with market vendors, a tapestry of worlds colliding. But the true drama unfolded when the Hargroves arrived, uninvited, of course. Reginald lumbered in first, his cane thwacking the marble like a judge's gavel. Beatrice followed, her face a mask of powdered outrage. Pearls clutched like rosary beads. Thomas trailed, his new wife Clara on his arm, her eyes wide with the discomfort of a caged bird. Eleanor greeted them at the door, resplendent in a gown of crimson silk stitched with subtle motifs of broken chains. Reginald, Beatrice, Thomas. What a surprise. "You witch," Beatrice hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. "This is our home. You stole it." "Stole?" Eleanor echoed, her laugh light as lace. "I bought it, fair and square. Debts have a way of demanding payment." Reginald's face purpled. "Well, contest it, fraud. You manipulated the market." "Contest away," Eleanor replied, gesturing to the crowd. "But first, enjoy the champagne. It's vintage imported, like your heirs." Thomas stepped forward, his voice low. "Ellie, please." I didn't mean for it to end like that." Her eyes hardened, oceans turning to ice. "Didn't mean? You meant every word, every glance. Now, the rent comes to me. First payment due on the 1st. Clara tugged his sleeve, whispering furiously, but Thomas deflated, shoulders slumping like a punctured balloon. The Hargroves retreated to their old apartment, now leased back at market. Raid defeated echoes in corridors that once amplified their commands. Word of the confrontation spread like wildfire, fueling Eleanor's legend. The crazy old lady was no more. She was Eleanor Hargrove, the phoenix of Eldridge, the woman who turned humiliation into empire. Clients flocked. Apartments filled with grateful tenants, single mothers, artists, dreamers like Leela once was. Leela, now 22 and Eleanor's partner in all but name, thrived. Her designs launched a subline. Leela's whispers, playful confections for the young and bold. Together, they mentored apprentices, turning the building into a school of stitches and self-worth. Evenings brought salons, women sharing stories under crystal chandeliers, mending emotional rips with laughter and wine. But shadows lingered. Beatrice, embittered in her reduced circumstances, spread poison among the old guard petty sabotages, like slashed tires on delivery vans. Reginald suffered a stroke, his empire reduced to a bedside vigil, where he muttered curses at Eleanor's name. Thomas, trapped in a loveless marriage and mounting debts, sought her out one stormy night, rain lashing the windows like accusations. He knocked on the penthouse door, drenched and desperate. "Ellie, I need help. The business, it's gone. Clara's left me." Eleanor regarded him from the doorway, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a desk lamp. Piles of sketches surrounded her, Leela's latest collection. "Help? Like you helped me?" "I was weak," he admitted, voice breaking. "Father's shadow. It swallowed me. Forgive me?" She studied him, the man she'd loved, now hollowed by time. Compassion flickered, but resolve held firm. "Forgiveness isn't erasure, Thomas. It's carrying the weight. Start by paying your rent on time. Then perhaps we'll talk." He left with bowed head, the door clicking shut like a final stitch. As winter thawed into spring, Eleanor's empire expanded. Branches sprouted in neighboring towns, each atelier a beacon for the sidelined. She launched a foundation, scholarships for seamstresses, grants for single mothers, classes in the building's basement where women learned not just to sew, but to soar. Leela spearheaded the youth program, her infectious energy drawing packs of wide-eyed girls who sketched futures brighter than their pasts, personal joys woven unexpectedly. Miriam Hale became more than patron, a friend, confidant, the sister Eleanor never had. Over greenhouse teas, they plotted expansions, a line of sustainable fabrics from recycled mill waste. Ethical and elegant. "You're not just clothing bodies," Miriam said one afternoon, pruning a wilting bloom. "You're draping destinies." Romance long banished, crept back in whispers. It arrived with Alexander Voss, a bookseller from across the street. His shop a cozy warren of leather-bound tomes and steaming cider. Alexander was quiet thunder tall, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that crinkled like well-loved pages. He first entered the atelier seeking a tie for a literary gala, but stayed for Eleanor's stories, shared over closing time coffees. "You're a plot twist," he told her one evening, as they wandered the moonlit streets. "The heroine who rewrites the ending." She blushed, unused to such gentleness. "And you? The steady volume on the shelf?" "The one with dog-eared pages from rereading," he replied, his hand brushing hers. Their courtship was slow, deliberate, a dance of shared silences and stolen glances. Leela teased mercilessly. "About time, boss. That man's got more plot than our ledgers." Alexander brought books to the salon, reading aloud from Austen and Woolf, his voice a balm to weary souls. Yet triumph's shadow is doubt. One balmy June night, Beatrice cornered Eleanor in the lobby, her once impeccable gown now frayed at the hems. "You think you've won?" she spat, eyes wild. "We're Hargroves. Blood like poison will seep into your precious paradise." Eleanor straightened, compassion tempering her steel. "Poison only kills if you let it, Beatrice. Join us. So, heal." Beatrice recoiled as if slapped, fleeing to her apartment where whispers said she unraveled further, scissors snipping at shadows. The climax came at the annual Eldridge Fashion Week, Eleanor's grandest showcase yet. The building thrummed with energy, models gliding down a runway strung between floors, lights dancing like fireflies. Leela's collection opened, youthful exuberance in pastels and pops. Eleanor's closed, a retrospective, gowns tracing her journey from street scraps to silken sovereignty. Midway, chaos erupted. Reginald, frail but furious, wheeled in unannounced, flanked by hired agitators who unfurled banners. Hargrove legacy stolen. Shouts rose, flashes popped, the crowd fracturing into murmurs. Eleanor stepped onto the runway, microphone in hand, her crimson gown a banner of blood and rebirth. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice steady as a heartbeat. "This building has seen falls and rises, tears and triumphs. 10 years ago, I was cast out, called crazy, barren, unworthy. Today, I stand not in vengeance, but victory. She gestured to the apartments above, where tenants leaned from balconies, faces alight. This is our legacy now, not of blood, but of bonds. Of women who stitch not just cloth, but communities. The agitators faltered. Reginald's eyes, milky with age, welled. Thomas in the wings nodded slowly, a ghost of pride flickering. The applause thundered, drowning dissent, as Leela joined her, arms linked in unbreakable thread. Years later, Eleanor, now silver-haired and sage, sat on the penthouse balcony, Alexander's hand warm in hers. Below, Leela directed a new apprentice, her laughter echoing like bells. The building pulsed with life. Rents paid with gratitude. Designs shipped worldwide. Stories woven into every seam. Beatrice passed quietly that winter. Her last words a murmured apology scrawled on a napkin stitched with trembling thread. Forgive the unstitched. Reginald followed, his will leaving trinkets to the foundation. Thomas visited sporadically, a tenant turned tenant in training, learning humility one payment at a time. Eleanor never forgot the crazy old lady on the curb, her first customer. In quiet moments, she touched a faded apron still tucked in a drawer, a talisman of tenacity. We all start ragged, she'd tell the apprentices, but with the right thread, we tailor our tomorrows. And so, 47 Eldridge Street stood not as a monument to revenge, but a masterpiece of redemption. Where once humiliation hung heavy, now hope fluttered free. The rent came to Eleanor, yes, but so did respect, love, legacy. And in the weave of it all, she found her truest fit, a life sewn from the heart.